We're human beings with the blood of a million savage years on our hands. But we can stop it. We can admit that we're killers, but we're not going to kill today.
That's all it takes. Knowing that we're not going to kill today.
Hey guys, Pete here. It's time for my For All Mankind Season 2 Episode 9 breakdown. It's a pretty straightforward setup and race to the end episode with just a few side character plots to tie up. The penultimate episode had a surprising ending though. I didn't see coming, I have to say, not how it played out anyway. Before we get into that, this is your spoiler warning. Make sure you go and watch the episode before you watch this video or you will be spoiled. Please do subscribe on your way out though so you won't get lost on your way back. With that out of the way, let's get to it. Things start off right after the killing of the Soviet cosmonaut at the end of episode 8. The second cosmonaut who was shot was rushed to Jamestown Base where the doctor is doing her best to try to save him. He won't end up dying, but he does remain unconscious for most of the episode. When asked, the Moon Marines say they perceived a hostile intent, but are forced to admit that they found no weapons in the case, or anywhere else for that matter. On Earth, Ellen, Margo, and Bradford are assessing the situation, knowing full well that wars have been started over less. Bradford makes it plain that if this turns into World War III, the 20 million that were killed back in the First World War, that's going to seem like a car accident in comparison. As you would imagine, the Soviet leadership is outraged about the situation on the moon, and they're out there making statements saying that they have intelligence that Seadragon 17 will be carrying nukes to the moon. We'll learn that they've launched their Buran shuttle, and Bradford tells us that the CIA says that it's armed to the teeth. At JSC, they watch Buran dock with the Soviet space station. They see that it refuels there, and then it burns towards the moon. Apparently, based on what Ellen says here, this is how the US does it with their shuttles so that they can make lunar orbit as well. This has been a thing that I've seen in the comments over and over again. People complaining about the fact that they're using shuttles and that the shuttle could never make it to the moon. I guess this is your explanation for that. It looks like the plan is to use the armed Buran shuttle to blockade the moon so that the next Seadragon flight can't make it there. This leads to Molly calling Ed into her office and letting him know that the DoD is officially taking over the Pathfinder mission. The plan is for the armed Pathfinder to escort Seadragon in a move to prevent any aggression from the Soviets' armed shuttle. As Ed's telling his crew, Sally Ride pretty much calls it for what it is. It's basically a game of chicken. Because if the Buran would have gotten to the point of firing, then the Pathfinder's mission would be a failure. They're betting that if they show up with weapons, then the Soviets will have to back down from using theirs. Because blowing up the Seadragon would mean that their shuttle would be destroyed by Pathfinder. And Pathfinder, as Piscotti says, has a longer range with its missiles, so they're just hoping that that will be enough. Ed does give both members of his crew the option of resigning if they're not okay with it, but neither of them take him up on the offer. From a news report, we see that the Soviets have moved their northern fleet. It's now headed toward the Panama Canal, and in response, the US has set the threat level to DEFCON 3. Ed comes home to tell the family that the launch date for Pathfinder got moved up, and Kelly is worried. Karen steps in and won't let Ed reassure her. She says that he can't promise that things will be all right, which is true, and he concedes that, but tries to make her feel better about the situation. After he says goodbye to Kelly, he asks Karen to walk him to the car and ask her if she's all right. He knows something's up, and he doesn't want to leave without her telling him what's going on. She tries to put it off, saying that they can talk when he gets back, but he insists, so she eventually tells him that she slept with someone. It's a gut punch. He didn't see it coming. She makes the point of saying it was the decision that she made. She wasn't drunk or anything like that. And then tries to play it down, saying it was a one-time thing and it doesn't matter. His blood is up though. He can't make sense of what's happening. He wants to know who it was. She won't say. And it all ends with him storming off, but we know that they're going to come back to it at some point. The basic takeaway is that Karen isn't sure if she still wants to be married to Ed. She'd like to get counseling now that this has happened. and he's got an important mission that he's getting ready to go on. So it's a pretty bad situation all the way across the board. Later, we'll see him drinking at a bar, ruminating, looking at his wedding ring. There's a woman across the bar looking his way. They share a smile. They end up back in his room going at it. When the time comes, he can't perform, and even though she's very encouraging, he ends up not going through with it. So Seadragon 17 does launch. That means Pathfinder's ready to go, but Ed's head is elsewhere. We see that he's thinking about his fight with Karen, and at one point totally misses what Piscotty's telling him. It's interesting because we see at JSC that they're monitoring the Seadragon launch, but not Pathfinder, since the DoD took control of that mission. Pathfinder does a striking air launch to orbit, and the reveal shot is great. Ed says, "Are you all ready for the inaugural flight of the most badass nuclear rocket to ever grace God's green earth?" Then we get that roll of the camera from where they looked like they were sitting on the launch pad, and then we see it pull out to see that it is riding on the back of a shuttle carrier aircraft. We see them engage the Nerva engine and then have an intense, if not long, transition from Earth's atmosphere. Ed talks about flying into space, not launching or blasting off, and the Seadragon Pathfinder rendezvous is on. Back on the moon, we'd seen a message saying that the Soviets were sending people over with the intention of retrieving their 2 cosmonauts. And eventually 2 Soviet cosmonauts arrive at Jamestown. There's a lot of posturing when they get there. They both want to go inside, but only the doctor is allowed to see the injured cosmonaut. When Webster tries to talk to him, explain what happened, he says that she should be tried for crimes in an international court. He wants to take the injured cosmonaut back to their base, but the people of Jamestown won't let him because it will probably kill him. It seems like he doesn't want him to wake up with only NASA people around. Tensions are high. There's security risks to think about. Eventually, they show them the burnt cosmonaut, which is gruesome. It's a hard situation for them, seeing their comrade killed that way, seeing his dead body. The commander of Jamestown says that they think that the bullet made a spark and the pure oxygen ignited inside the suit. And like I said, this is an emotional situation for the Soviets. When NASA offers to help them move the body, the cosmonaut loses it a bit and says you will not touch his body, and you kind of see where he's coming from here. Later, we do see that the other cosmonaut wakes up, and when he realizes he's in the American base, he announces that he wishes to defect to the United States. He asks for amnesty, basically. On Earth, we see Ellen say that they're going to allow him to do that. And this means there's another complicated situation brewing up there. So Margo asks about Apollo's Soyuz. At first, Ellen says that if the president would ask her, she was going to tell him not to go through with it. Margo has a better idea, though. She encourages her to wait and see, because if the Soviets launch Soyuz, then they'll have a better idea about what's going on. And that all makes sense, so they decide to go with that plan. We see Danny and her crewmate getting ready for launch. She forgot to take off her ring, so there's an emotional moment there when she's thinking about Clayton. Later, we see them sitting on the launch pad waiting to see if Soyuz will go so they can find out if their mission is on. As they're waiting, Danny says, "We're human beings with the blood of 1,000,000 savage years on our hands, but we can stop it. We can admit that we're killers, but we're not going to kill today. That's all it takes, knowing that we won't kill today." That's from Star Trek Season 1, Episode 23, as she says, and it makes for a pretty powerful moment. At Mission Control, we see Sergei contact Margo and tell her that Soyuz has launched and that their cosmonauts look forward to meeting the Apollo astronauts in space. Then we get to see the Apollo launch, and so far so good. Apollo Soyuz is still moving ahead, even though Pathfinder is currently on its way to go confront Buran and try to break this blockade. So I will circle around to talk about everything that's set up in space for the finale after I talk about the ending. But as I said at the beginning, there are a few side character story beats that we need to talk about as well. The first one is Molly and Wayne. We learned in the last episode that Molly was on her way to being blind. And here we see that she's trying to set up something where she can beat that. And that has led her to the point of wanting to go down to Mexico and get an experimental treatment that doesn't sound all that good. Wayne realizes this and he tries to talk her out of it. Eventually, she's on her way to take off, and she's basically not telling him what's going on. He calls her out. He knows that she took $10,000 out of their bank account, and he threatens her. He says, look, if you go do this, then I'm not going to be here when you come back. And in a rage, she storms out, planning to go through with it anyways. We see that she almost makes it to a plane to fly away, but then stops and changes her mind. When she returns home, we see that Wayne was following through with his promise. He's packing up his stuff. He's getting ready to go, but he's not gone yet. And they have a heartfelt reunion. And yeah, she's probably going to end up blind, but she made the right decision. Also, there was a scene with Lee Atwater showing up to talk to Larry at Ellen and Larry's place, trying to get him to push Ellen into running for office, starting a political career. He makes a good case for it, and you could see that she probably does have potential in that area. And then we see Pam come in, and she hears what they're talking about, and that makes her really start to question what she should do. Later, we see Ellen come home where she finds a letter. In that, Pam lies. She says that she just wants to go back to Elise, trying to let her off the hook easy. And this is devastating for Ellen. And it's kind of a sad ending for the two. Maybe it's not the ending, but for right now, because basically Pam is just stepping aside so Ellen can have her career. Because of the social norms being the way they are, they can't be together publicly and have her still hold on to that position. Also, we saw Tracy and Gordo have a moment early in the episode. Later, when she's going to smoke, we see that he's waiting there to surprise her, and he makes his move. She plays with him a bit, and at the end, they head into the smoking room with the implication that they're going to hook up. But perhaps more importantly, what they are right now is they're isolated from the rest of the people on Jamestown. Because over at the command center, we see a crew there doing their tests, and they notice that there's a cosmonaut standing outside the window. He pulls out a gun, he shoots it at the window, that causes a loss of pressure. Most of them are able to get out of that section and close the door, but one of them does get sucked out into the vacuum. And the episode ends with an armed cosmonaut entering the base. And we see that the commander is in his office. He's sealed off in an airtight room. So he's with them. Gordo and Tracy are alone in that section where she smokes. And I was pretty surprised at this. And I'm really not sure 100% what is going on. Like, obviously, they attacked Jamestown Base. But did they do that on their own because of what happened when they saw their fallen comrade earlier? We saw that the one cosmonaut was really upset. So there's a very distinct possibility that he went back and he told the other guys what he saw, what happened. They found out that the other cosmonaut wanted to defect. Maybe they believed that, maybe they didn't. And I think there's a real possibility that they're just acting on their own here. We'll have to wait until next week to find out. But if you think about it, the whole point of Margo telling Ellen to wait and see on Apollo Soyuz was that they thought that if they launched Soyuz, then that would be the indication that they were ready to de-escalate. So them launching that doesn't really seem to jive with launching a ground offensive to take Jamestown Base forcefully. But like I said, we'll have to wait and see. So it was an intense episode. It's set up for a crazy looking finale. There was definitely some drama, but everything seemed pretty balanced out. Gordo and Tracy being off by themselves, coming back together, starting to look like things are working out, does make me worry about their futures, which I've talked about in the last couple of videos. The conclusion to Pam and Ellen's romance was somewhat disappointing, though I was happy to see that Wayne was able to get through to Molly, even though that's a little bittersweet considering that her career as a pilot is over. I was blown away by the Pathfinder launch and the way they presented that. I thought that worked out really well. The Nerva engine was a nice touch, and it's nice to see that that program is still ongoing, considering it was canceled in our timeline when they pulled back from space exploration in general. There are actually quite a few cool looking launches in this episode, and we have a pissed off Ed heading towards an armed Buran shuttle with the armed Pathfinder. Karen's indiscretions do serve to make this more volatile, but I mean, making Danny the choice for that is still pretty inexplicable at this point. We'll have to see where that goes. Apollo and Soyuz are both up there as far as we know, and there was an image of them in orbit on the watch page on Apple TV. Hard to say how that'll play out now that things are escalating on the surface, but it is a nice setup, and I can't wait to see how they resolve things in the finale. The defection and the fallout from that was actually surprising. I expected things to get intense, but I hadn't expected that we would see a strike team waltzing through the window at Jamestown. There is a lot to talk about, but I think this is a good place to leave the video, so let me know in the comments where you think things are heading. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.